and it never stops, and it's pressure from up and down to know who you are, where you're going, what love is, through different experiences that you have.
I will not do it. Like, I have such a kind of PDA profile, I cannot help it. And like, we have language for it now, which we didn't have before.
Everybody, the mutation that's happening in the emotional center, when we have been running away from the conflict, from the crisis, the reaction, the victimization, the dishonor, you know, all these things that are there, it is about being called out, and it is the genius that comes through in that. So especially for somebody like you.
Welcome to Becoming Full of Yourself, the show where fulfillment is not a finish line, it's a way of being. I'm Ebony Allard, master coach, energy specialist, soul contract guide, here to help you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. In each episode, we explore what it means to lead from the inside out, embody your truth, and become so full of yourself that you overflow. Let's get into it. Bella, I'm so excited to have you here. And I was going to say this before we started recording, but I was like, no, I'm going to share it. But we almost didn't have this conversation because I almost got in my own way. Because when I finished the deck that I made and sent you recently, all I wanted was to be able to say thank you for all the work that you've done in the world, all the inspiration you've been to me, how you kind of inspired me of how I could bring all these modalities that I love together. And then when it landed in my hand, I was like, she's going to open it and tell me that I've plagiarized her work, and she's going to hate me. She's never going to talk to me. I can't even. And so I didn't. And then one day I did that thing where you're like hovering over something, and I sent you a friend's request, and you added me back straight away and then sent me a message, and my whole brain just went, what just happened? And I love those moments because when we don't think, the body's doing its own thing and everything is always working for us. So what an intro. Thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with me.
Thank you.
Your work is really magic for many reasons. And one of those reasons is that it does bring together these modalities that, for me at least, up until more recently, were so masculine in their presentation, in their embodiment, in their paths and structures and containers. And one of the things I love about how you show up in the world and how you bring this work to the world is that it is so gate 2, code 2, right? Like so in this kind of feminine, receptive, beautifully embodied way. I'd love to hear a little bit about how that all came about and how you ended up on this path.
Yeah, so gate 2 or Jinky 2, we call it the feminine in the 64 doors. That's the archetypes I created with Ashley. The other name that I really love for it is the way shower. And I think for me, those systems, they started to show me a way of living, a different way of living, a living where actually the body shows you the way and the mind doesn't show you the way. So as it showed me the way, I also feel like a 4-6 profile, it had to become transpersonal. It had to also be shared. It's like, I have learned to orient in a way that is more aligned with who I am. And how can I share that inspiration with the world so that we all can move in a way that is more in flow and more receptive than this kind of pushing where we think we have to go with our minds.
I love that. And for me, I really feel the energies of each of the codes, and I can see them, which is why I started drawing them. Was like, there's too much language here. It's too written. There's so much text. For me, I need to feel it. I need to have these kind of the imagery around it. And again, until I came across Unlock Your Design, I hadn't seen anybody else do that. I mean, I had seen some, but they were not inspiring. I could not feel the energy in them. How did it come about? How did the collaboration happen?
So I think that for Ash and me, we were supposed to meet, but it was somebody who knew her and then knew my work. And she said, you guys are doing the same thing. You're weaving human design and Gene Keys seamlessly, and you have so much energy. So you need to come together. And we worked together. That was Melinda Butterfield. And we worked with her with this little membership group that we had. And then the second year, we felt like there is something magical with following the transit. So every week or every 7 days, the sun goes into a new gate.
Yeah.
And we had been following that. So we wanted to do something like a play or a game with it, where we were sharing how to walk the wheel, because it's all a zodiac wheel, and we can look at it in terms of the zodiac signs, or we can look at it in terms of the 64 gates. So we started to walk the wheel, and that's the way that we decided to create the landing page for each one. But it was so fast. And that was also when we realized that Ashley and I work really well together. We have together that channel in human design that is called organizational being. So that is the 6217, which is about detail, and it's objective and logic, and it sees it in images, but also is really good at translating. So I think we use that. And also, I'm a Taurus, she's a Virgo. If we say we're going to do this every 6 days, we are going to publish a new landing page. We did it. It was a year. And I started to write the descriptions. They were quite short in the beginning, but then it was like I started to live these archetypes from the inside out. And I started to realize how they are also connecting to the harmonic gate and to the programming partner. And they became like families and lovers, and all these different things, dynamics started to happen. So it was definitely a storytelling that wasn't decided, but it grew from walking the wheel. And that's really kind of the main thing that we're still doing. When we are following the sun in those spirals, we are feeling them, and we are able to play with the archetypes and all these different parts of us that is not who we are, but they give us tastes of life. And also they allow us to take life a little more lightly, because you said before that you had lived the sun going through the gates that you have, or activations that you have in your Jupiter. And every time we go through something, it moves something, and I call it spirals of deconditioning. It's really every time, and hopefully we can weave with a little bit more embodiment, a bit more awareness, a bit more wisdom, but we're never done. And that's the beautiful thing. I think also, walking these archetypes every year, it's a good reminder of all these archetypes that are inside of us and around us.
I love that. And I feel like it's so real, so embodied in a way. At the moment, one of my kind of bugbears with the landscape of the commoditization, or the business, or the mainstream of spirituality, which, I've been in this world my whole life, was born into a family of seekers and philosophers, and have always been surrounded by astrology and archetypes and shadow work and all of these things. But as it's become more and more mainstream and kind of for everybody, it's also become it's almost like in the thing that is supposed to bring us back to agency is being taken away from us, in the same way as religion was and has been over the years. And so for me, you must buy a course, or you must read a book, or you must, all of these commodity, the commoditization of these things that are us, right? What I love about the simplicity of walking the wheel is that you can't help but embody it, because when you commune with it, when you are in it, when you are paying attention to the subtleties, there is nothing to do and everything to be, right?
Yeah, I feel sometimes we get stuck in time, and there are these things that we bring with us, and it's a kind of attachment, not only to the bad things that happen that we have resentment about, but even the good things that happen that we kind of want to hold on to and relive. And I feel like the feminine, like if we even speak about the divine feminine, it is to not hold on to anything. And it's really kind of the void of the heart, because when there is nothing that takes up space, there is so much space to love. And when that is the way that we are facing and meeting the world, and that's also what I feel with the archetypes, to allow them to come in completely and love them fully with all the intensity of what that is, and then we let them go. So for me, a lot of how I want to live is with that complete receptivity of, I am ready to face what's in front of me. And that, I call that the tantric way of living. And then also, you were speaking about being a 5-2. There are a lot of projections and misunderstandings about what Tantra is. And for me, there is not really a better way of saying that, but I think it is this feminine way of being able, like, there's nothing to forgive. In some sense, everything is already forgiven, because the more that we bring things with us, the more there are parts of us that are numbing down, or they are carrying things that don't allow us to live fully. So, and that's also why the love is not brought. And that's also why the feminine and the masculine cannot really meet, because there isn't that space even to kind of come together when we're carrying these things with us.
I feel like that's such a beautiful explanation of where we're at as a species, as a culture, right? Like the astrology of the world, and therefore our experience of it, is speeding up right now. We are watching evolution happen, and yet we have never had such disparate generations alive at the same time, right? And that is so powerful as well, to be able to, you know, we see online this kind of people talking about what's going on with Generation Alpha, whilst also talking about what's going on with the boomers. And there is this huge gap and divide between so much change. And yet that chaos is exactly what we all need to be swimming in order for us to have this experience of acceptance of all of the energies as being equitable rather than equal. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And even as I just said that, and I'm like, we could talk like this forever. And yet there are so many people for whom it becomes an intellectual conversation, right? And it becomes clever and wordy. And for those people, how do we make it more tangible? How do we drop into actually unlocking our design or embodying who we are designed to really be?
So I always come back to the body, like you're saying, but what is that? Because we can speak about, you spoke about shadow work, and we know that there is trauma and imprints and all the things that we're keeping inside of our body.
Mm.
So an easy way to come back is to feel into what feels alive. Because we could say, what do you love? And that, but that can also be an intellectual thing. What do I love? What should I love? But when do you feel alive? Because that is a really good start for where actually you are aligned with your design. Because often when we are using the mind and we're trying to understand and we're listening to this audiobook over and over again, it's not that we feel super alive. We might feel intellectually stimulated, but how alive do you feel? And that's the same thing when you walk into a room. How easy is it to breathe around the people that you are? Do you feel like you can express, that you can breathe, that you can be open, that your heart feels alive? Those are really good things to check, because there's so much to be mentally stimulated by, but it's not until we actually bring it into our lives that we actually understand it and living it. So that is just one thing. But then, you know, like even going back to the tantric way of living, you know, in your life, are you bringing in your breath? Are you bringing in your expression, your sound, your vocal cords, not only speaking nicely, but everything from guttural sounds to beautiful singing to, like, you know, intense expression to whisper, like all the kinds of voice that can come through us. And then, you know, even the touch, your own body, your lover's body, like how in tune are you with your senses, and starting to live in a more embodied way. And I think that is the feminine. This is how we take in the world. This is how we touch the world, because a lot of human design is also showing us, depending on what's defined, like how do we touch, how do we impact, where do we have energy that's consistent, and also how do we filter, how do we take in. And that's another really interesting or important thing to look at. You know, are we becoming sponges? Because if we take in other people's emotions, other people's opinions, other people, you know, valuing of us, then there's not so much space to even know who we are or feeling alive. So there's the energy that comes in and there's energy that goes out. And it seems like when we come in or come home to what we are first, then we are less vulnerable to all that conditioning, and it never stops. And it's pressure from up and down, you know, the adrenal pressure from the root center, and then all the pressure of what everybody thinks, like from all different kinds of places. And that is where I believe that it's quite difficult before we are 30 or over to even really be able to see this clearly and shake it off. And hopefully what you're saying about the young generations, maybe they aren't that prone to actually kind of walk in a leash. I think I was born in the 80s, so I was told I can do everything I want, but it was also a certain value of what I would choose to do. And if I can do everything, then I have to choose the best. And if I don't choose the best, then I'm failing. So I think that is changing a little bit. And I still think that for the new generations to come back to knowing what's natural for them, what's in flow, where do they feel alive, how can they express, how can they move, how can they feel, what do they love? All these things are important. And that is an inquiry, a joint inquiry for parent and child to be in that dialogue around it. Because I think that, knowing yourself and knowing the people that are close to you really help you to love them in a way that is constructive for both you and the other.
Yeah. And I feel like there are no accidents, even though it often feels that way. Even it's like, why? Even to me, who is somebody who is hugely optimistic and able to spin everything into this is happening for me, not to me, there are still times, but it's like, but this makes no sense, right? Like, why is it happening like this? And there are no accidents, right? If we look at the children that are coming of age now, or coming into that kind of teenage space where they're starting to find their own authority, where they're starting, or even moving towards separation and recognizing what is mine, what isn't mine, and finding their own power and way of walking the wheel in the world. Their parents are our generation, right? Like, are the had either Pluto in Libra or Pluto in Scorpio, and now we've got the right. And it's so interesting to me to be like, well, there's no mistakes, right? Because our parents were that way, and we have this kind of back and forth, these axes that are working together on every layer throughout society. And I think that thing of, like, I don't know, we were very much brought up, at least I was, to make things tidy and for there to be a point, and then and sometimes I look at all of this and I'm like, maybe the point is just spirals, right? Like, it's just spiral on spiral on spiral, but we get really attached to there being something to be attached to. Like, how will I know that I'm there? And one of the things that I see with people unlocking their design, or like living the path of their design, is exactly that. Like, have I done it yet? How will I know that I'm there? Oh, I'm out of alignment because things aren't going how I want them to. Those kind of things. I wonder if you've got any invitations, or you can talk to, like, it's all very well that we call it an experiment, and yet people want to know that they're doing it right.
Well, this is where I'm a little bit provocative, in the sense that if that's happening for you, okay, continue to do that until you get so freaking tired of yourself so that you stop. Because I can tell you that you're doing it. For me, there is just something where you have to get used to your mind being the monkey mind and chattering. And if you want to care about that, and if you want to be, again, kind of a dog in a leash for that, then you are exhausting yourself, and that's a choice. So it's way more interesting to start to watch what you're thinking. And even if we just go back to human design and we look at variables, which in the body graph are the arrows around the head, they are speaking about our awareness. But what Rob was saying, the founder of human design for 7 years, you are in your experiment of strategy and authority, because that is how you're learning to move through the world with less resistance. You're learning to flow based on who you are, based on what we said before, your definition, where you take in and where you impact. When you start to do that, you start to feel better in your skin. You start to actually want to be in your body. You start to know who you are, where you're going, what love is, through different experiences that you have. And then you have enough space so that you can start to watch your awareness. And you're still going to have those things that are conditioned in you, the imprint from the parents, or from your own little, critic that sits on your shoulder that asks you, are you really doing it? Is this really worth it? Have you, lost so much time? All these things are still going to be here. But after a while, you can even smile at it. And that's the same thing when we say in relationship, like, why do you have to choose somebody who's so similar and you thought they were completely different to the ex or to your dad or to, and you're doing it again. But instead of seeing it as failure, and, again, you spoke about Pluto in Libra, for example. Like, for me, with Saturn and Pluto in Libra, it's been so much about being afraid of failure and telling myself that I'm failing again. But there is definitely another way of also looking at it, because you know, looking at life in terms of failure or success, it doesn't really work. Like you said before, it's all spirals, it's all experiences. And as we're going through these things, often there is a little bit more discernment, but it also becomes a bit comical because you realize that you don't have all the karma in the world. You don't have all the conditioning in the world. There's some things I really didn't care about even when I was like really young. And some people might think that, you know, for example, the shame thing. I'm born in Sweden. We go to the sauna naked with men and women and kids, and like there's nothing weird about that. It's just the way that we are with our bodies. But then you go to the States, maybe, and you're in a, you know, female locker room, and there are these things with like curtains, and you're like, but wait, there are only women in here and we're all between 20 and 50. Like, what's the point with a curtain? So you realize that you don't have all the karma on your shoulders. You're not here to solve all the core wounds. And then it becomes, you know, life becomes some things that you get to do. And that is actually fun and like crispy to, you know, sometimes have to work with these things. So for me, that's the way I see it. And, you know, if you're still kind of in that stuckness, it's okay. Be there until you get so tired of your own stuckness. So you shake it, and you might have to shake, you might have to scream, you might have to hurl, you might have to go and be in the forest for a while, like whatever makes you find this life force, because aliveness is just a word, but I'm speaking about Kundalini. I'm speaking about, you know, what makes us alive, that first spark that created the universe from the Big Bang, but that also lives inside of us. So that's the pulse of life. How in tune are you with the pulse of life? And when you feel that, your mind is going to seem less important to you, I believe.
Yeah, 100%. And I was laughing because there are some things in my world, like 18 will not leave me alone at the moment. But also, and then there are other ones, right? Like I have, and I read a little while ago about, you know, you're blocking your own success with your unconscious, with your EQ, right? And mine is 18. And so now it's like 18, 18, 18. And I can't stop seeing it everywhere, to the point where I'm making myself laugh, right? And it makes me braver, because I go, okay, is this really about integrity, or are you blocking yourself from something new? What if you use some of your, you know, your kind of your 28 or your fuck it energy to like work with this and play with it, right? And then I attract and collect magnetically people with gate 28 and also 38. And it's like, we can either all be in the like, why is life so hard place, or like, what's the point of any of it? Or we can be in the like, but it's all meaningful. Let's make meaning out of everything. And like, there's so much purpose to being alive, and I love it. And sometimes we're all in the bottom, and sometimes we're all in the top, and sometimes we can like pick each other up with like the recognition and the empathy and the compassion or the spark. And for me, again, that experience of recognizing that at 56, it's all an adventure. And the point is not to get anywhere, but to live, to experience it, and to tell stories. You know, ever since I was tiny, I used to say a good day is a good day and a bad day is a good story. And it's true, right? But it's the more that we start to be able to laugh at ourselves and not take it so seriously, and not be so binary with, did I succeed or fail? Am I good or bad? Is it right or wrong? But to weave compassion and curiosity into that aliveness, for me, that makes a real difference around just being in the dance of, sometimes I love life, sometimes I don't, sometimes I love my friends, sometimes I don't, right?
Yeah, and the times to come are going to be probably more chaotic than what we have seen. We're going out of the crustal planning, and we're coming into across this very different, very individual, but also on a binary, we could say, between victimization and freedom, and a 6-line reality. So if we are trying to control like our existence, which is one way that we are doing it with failure or success, it's going to be really tough. So I think what you just spoke about as a compass or as a platform, it's really, really good to do it now, because then when the coconuts start to fall, and it's not going to be coconuts, but whatever starts to fall in the structures of society. Like, this is the last time, speaking of Pluto again, that is back in Capricorn, and soon it's going to be in Aquarius, and that is for 20 years. So reality is not going to be what we know reality as. And I think that that's also, for those of us that discovered human design already, and maybe even more than a decade ago, we have had this opportunity to start to live from a place that is more embodied. And some of us, in some moments, we have gone up to our head again and try to understand it from there. And that's what we're speaking about 7 years. It's not a snap of fingers. It doesn't have to be a snap of fingers. It is very much like we say in that logic part of, or the understanding circuit, that there is a pattern, and it's improved as we identify with it. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time of experimentation before we're mastering something. So that's like what you're going back to saying, don't be so hard on yourself. But if you have these systems right now, you can use the gene keys. That is a kind of hero's journey. So you can look at the different spheres, and when you do the Venus sequence, you understand so many things about relationships, also why you attract the similar things because of your karma, your dharma. You can learn so much about intimacy, your chemistry with others, and it's really allowing you to have this kind of mystical way of walking life, and of meeting those places again where it's a bit crunchy, and where you have to lean in, and where your heart hopefully can open more. And then when we have human design, it's really like the snapshot of energy. Like, when you and I are together, what is it that happens in that chemistry? How do I touch you? How do you touch me? How do we co-create? You and I have so many electromagnetics, so that of course it's going to feel like there is something more that we can even touch when we are together than when we are alone. And that is what you're saying too, that it seems like you have some people in your life that are there, that can, you know, come in and be sounding boards. And I think that is important too. And sometimes I'm a 4/6 and I don't have a lot of first lines, and I was a little bit misunderstood that it's the first lines that need aloneness. But as a 4/6 on the roof, which was the pandemic that helped me go on the roof, because I was traveling internationally every single week before COVID. I realized that the fourth line, because it's harmonic with the first line, it also needs a lot of aloneness. And really the dilemma or the question for the fourth line is when to be together and when to be alone. So really, for me, even being in Sweden right now, I don't live here, I live in Miami, but I'm home in my own apartment. Not even many people of my friends know I'm here, and I have this conversation with you, but this is basically the first conversation that I'm having today. So I'm learning also that discernment of what is it that I want to engage in? Where is it that I want to share? So I feel as well that we're learning a lot of things through relationships, and also a discernment of choosing the same thing. When do I feel in alignment and flow with myself, but also with whom, and what are the kind of relationships that I want to invest in? Because going back to what you were saying about the Venus sequence and the EQ, really, when we look at the EQ, at the keynotes, the high frequency, the gift frequency, those are the keynotes that show us a kind of love language, not only intimate, but also friendship. When you can include in your relationship the high frequency of the line and the high frequency of the gene key, that is such a good starting point for re-imprinting the tracks of the emotional things that might have happened between you were 7 and 14, where you decided that it's not worth it to have people in your life. So there's a part of you that stepped back from daring to lean into friendship to being with the other. And when you can start to bring that in, so that could be respect, that could be, you know, courtesy, you know, whatever you have there in the lines, but then there's 64 different words in terms of the gene keys that are going to show you a gift that is so valuable when you bring that into relationship. So I think that this work sometimes, for me, the last few years, there's been a lot of aloneness, and I feel like I'm doing it by myself. But then this kind of conversations, like, no, like I'm not doing it by myself. And even you sent me the cards, and they're round and they're beautiful, and it's not a lot of text. Like sometimes I get lost in the text of, you know, wanting to say so much. And I'm like, the simplicity of this, and it's the spirals, and you know, then I feel that, you know, the downward spiral suddenly starts to become an inspiration that goes upwards instead.
Yeah, I really feel that. And I feel like we're at a tipping point. You know, I have an Aquarius South node, a Leo North node. And for a long, long time, I was like, what does that mean? Because my sun is also 0 degrees of Leo, and I couldn't see the separation. And then I've got this Sagittarius rising and Sagittarius moon, both in the 12th house with Neptune on the ascendant, right? And so, like, and something that you said earlier has just really landed, which is you're not working with all the karma, right? Like, it's really clear. Come on, like just 4 things here, right? It's like, oh. If I stop focusing on all the negative space and start focusing on what is right in front of me, then everything starts to shift, right? And so that piece of like, I've been alone, no one understands me, I'm so misunderstood, no one gets any of the things I'm interested in, like all of that. It's hilarious to me that my book that I wrote 10 years ago is Misfit to Maven, because I'm now like, oh, well, of course, right? And the new one I'm writing as I step more into that Leo North Node is becoming full of yourself, because who the fuck else should you be full of? And it's like, well, it's all there. It's just, are you willing to take part and be alive in this incarnation experience that you chose for yourself? Or are you just going to be looking at everybody else and what everyone else is doing and allow yourself to be distracted? And so that thing of like, if I'm looking for evidence that I'm alone, I will find it. If I'm looking for evidence that there are other incredible enigmas out in the world who won't just be like, who is this annoying girl, but will actually be like, oh my God, yes, hi, then I'll find it. But it's still such a choice in that moment, right? And as people often say to me, you're so courageous, you're so brave. And I'm like, you have no idea how much fear I live with and work with every day, right? Like 28 is such a huge part of my design. It's my, it's my unconscious earth. It's a huge part of my purpose for being here. And when purpose is your purpose, you can end up in a head fuck, right? And so it's so nice to be able to come back to the body, come back to the nature, come back to having conversations, come back to like all of these really simple things. I think we make it so complicated for ourselves. And we want to know, like, give me a 7-point plan of how I can do it. And I think people do that with the gene keys. So if they're just starting and they're coming into this world and they're curious and they're like, the gene keys sound amazing and Ebony's simplified them with these cards for me, but like, where do I begin? On the one hand, I see people on the one hand, they want to do all of it at once and they will not listen to there's a sequence, start with the activation, but they also like get really, really overwhelmed. Have you got any insight for me around that?
For me, I discovered human design and gene keys at the same time with Rosie Aronson, who did the deck, The Wisdom Keepers. And I'm very grateful for that, because I feel that I am somebody who loved to do things differently. And if I would just have come into one world, there could have been this system that I have to follow the way they tell me how to do it. But because there was already 2 systems from the beginning, I actually got to choose my way. So I do feel that we all have different ways of taking in and of learning. And you have that 28, I have the 28 twice as well. It is the daredevil, so it needs to find its own way of doing it. It's an individual gate, so it has to do with that individuality, uniqueness, self-empowerment. And I feel that it's a moment-to-moment thing. So it can definitely be that the first you come in and you do some kind of course or some kind of online retreat and you feel into that. And then the next step might be something different. I feel like it's a check-in all the time. And at the same time, to not get stuck in a system. So I know that someone says, oh, learn this system really well before you start playing with somebody else, something else. And could be, but it's not necessarily like that. There are going to be different things at different times that talk to you and allow that to happen. And that doesn't mean to just, I'm not speaking about running away, but I'm speaking about inspiration and what feels alive again. And if you are meant to be working with these systems, if this is a catalyst for you, it's already written, it's already there. So you kind of just have to, like we said before this recording, like you have to put on the seatbelt and see where it takes you. So way more than kind of deciding this is exactly how I'm going to learn this for the 3 next years. You could, but there's also a possibility that, you know, God has another plan for you. And then when you realize, then you can always course correct or take another way down the road.
Yeah. And for me, that feels a lot more feminine, and it feels a lot more embracing of this energy that is that individual energy that you're talking about, that 28 for me, but also the 5-2-ness of self-motivated hero. Like, I will not do it. Like, I have such a kind of PDA profile. I cannot help it. And we have language for it now, which we didn't have before. But I have a pervasive drive for autonomy. And if you tell me to do something a particular way, I will walk in the other direction and not do it, even if I want to, right? Like, I just can't. And so really giving myself and all those people in my world permission to remember that the first step on this journey with this particular modality, if we're starting with human design, is, where's your authority? What is your authority? Why, you know, are you giving it away to Ra? Are you giving it away? Like, where are you giving your power away to? Oh, tell me how to learn, right? Versus as an emotional authority, am I enjoying it? Does it feel good? If I'm not, stop and take a break and absorb and digest, which is kind of written in that first piece around authority, right? And for me, it's like, it's not a rule of like, you must do, you know, type authority because somebody's trying to control how you learn. These are instructions for a recipe for you to become your own authority and to enjoy the experience of discovering yourself and falling in love with yourself and how you interact with the world and other people, right?
Yeah, and I believe what you're just saying, that is why human design is important. So if Gene Keys, if that's a hero's journey, and that's amazing to embark on, but it's really good to know the vehicle that you have to embark on that journey. So for me, it's very important to come back to the very basis of human design and the form principle that we're here to be embodied, and that the inner authority never comes from the mind. Like, those things, we kind of want to start from there because it makes everything else so much more doable. And there, it can be a bit much to remember all the gene keys and everything that's there. Like, I see people becoming overwhelmed often, but when you have the kind of basic map of what the body graph is and your design, it really helps. So for me, that's maybe the first step. That's kind of the legs of the table. And then there's a lot of cool things that can happen on the table, like when you bring in the gene keys and you bring in understanding some of the shadow work. And then at the same time, you know, like, I know you and I could speak for the same amount of time that we have spoken and have many more conversations where we're not mentioning the gene keys and human design, because there's even a part of me that feels a little bit, that's a strong word, sad, that if somebody doesn't know those systems, if I say to somebody that I know from some other place in my life, you know, listen to this conversation, it was so inspiring and I had such a good time, half of the language, they won't understand it. And they will, you know, even after the first 2 questions, they probably will check out and say, yeah, that seemed interesting for you. So for me, there's also something where we even can go completely beyond the systems and be like, what is the essence? You know, that's your 56 again, that's my 11. It's like, what is the essence of what wants to come through here? How could we speak about that so that somebody in any language could understand it? And now with AI, they could put the subtitles or even like voiceovers probably in their own language, like that. And not because I necessarily feel as like a 4th, 6th that I need to touch all the masses, but I do feel that there's something universal and something more essential that is also wanting to be communicated. And that, you know, somehow with that 38, 39 that I have, going back to a lot what you're saying, like, at the end of the day, I have to kill the teacher. Otherwise, I'm not really that warrior and that kind of provocateur, because with that individual circuitry, it is to find our own uniqueness and then find new ways of conveying that to the world, which for the feminine could also be wordless. And that's also why I feel like when we get off this conversation, when somebody has listened, like, what feels alive in your body to do? And it could be that you're so inspired, or it could be that you're so triggered. And when you are that, because you are a human in an animal body, you have a human heart, you have a creator mind, you're connected between sky and earth, so that spirit and soul can play in you. So with all that, like, what is it that feels alive for you when you come out of a situation or a conversation? So maybe again, you have to shake, maybe you have to take a shower, like there's always something that the body kind of wants to do. But are you listening to that? Because if you would be in the jungle and you're an animal and there's a hunt, and then you still are not eaten by the other animal, probably you're going to shake it off, right? So I think that there's some of those basic things when we are so connected to the mind, to the visual, to the vocal, that we have forgotten. And that for me is this more embodied place where in every moment, what is it saying from the inside? How does my body want to move? What's natural for me? Where does it feel like I'm numb? Where don't I dare to breathe? Like all these things are kind of checking points that can anchor us here and now, and that can tell us what needs our attention.
It's so true. And there are those different places of, we can talk about it, and when we're talking in this way, it's still very masculine, right? Like, it's like, let's talk about the structures, let's talk about the words, let's talk about the all of this stuff. And yet what I love around the way that I tend to communicate and the people that I'm in conversations with, it wouldn't matter if somebody didn't speak English, because they could still listen to this conversation and hear a rhythm and a roll and a frequency and a vibration that was music to them, of integration and of inspiration and of remembering aliveness, right?
Yeah, and that is, I feel like, the integration and the spaces in between, going back to what we have spoken about before, that is really where we also want to stop in our lives and allow, because integration, that is part of the spirals. Like, we can have so many experiences, but also retreat and see what is the medicine from that. And also with the in-breath and the out-breath, it's like, it's in the space, especially for the feminine, where it happens. Like, it's, those are in intimacy. It's in the spaces where there's nothing, where where you feel most of creation move through you. So I feel like that is, if there is something also that I feel after this conversation, it's the feminine brings in the space into anything, and the integration, because she dares to feel what's there, when she doesn't just go forward all the time, but also when she receives what has been said and she feels it. And sometimes it is excruciating pain to feel what's there. But also, the more we dare to feel whatever is there, we also get to feel the ecstatic bliss. And life is everything in between. And when we dare to feel into the form, we get to live that, everything that's there. And I feel that is part of the work that's here and now, and that we all are here to do. And life becomes so much more rich. And you could say emotional authorities and enjoyment, but I think this is for everybody. The mutation that's happening in the emotional center, when we have been running away from the conflict, from the crisis, the reaction, the victimization, the dishonor, all these things that are there and just seem like a rocky chaos. And the more we dare to actually feel what's there, the more we're allowing the emotional center to mutate. And even like the solar plexus, if we think about the chakra pillar, the solar plexus, the third chakra, coming together with the fourth chakra. And suddenly, we're speaking about the animal, the human, and the creator. Well, when we can kind of close that split between the 3D or the 2D and the 4D, or the solar plexus and the heart, that's also when we become much more anchored and home, and where we can walk through the world and face things, even if it's a little bit difficult, but it's worth it, because there's an integration, there's a medicine, there is the wisdom and an embodiment that happens as we are bringing that awareness and dare to continue to walk.
Yeah. I went for a swim this morning, and I was feeling like the busyness, the pressure of my schedule and life, and the energies of everything speeding up. And we all experience that, and then we get choice. And my choice was like, no, I can find 30 minutes in a day to go and and turn the phone off and like just be in the water, right? So I'm swimming, and maybe 4 minutes in, so many like ideas, clarity, all these loops, like every loop, every tab, everything I've got open, like close, so much so I had to get out of the swimming pool, pick my phone up, write a post, and then be like in note form, because I'm aware of my time, and I'm like, I want to stay in the water, but if I'm going to lose it, and like I felt hilarious, like leaning out of the swimming pool, writing this thing, and then getting back in, and being like, no, okay, so I've got 20 more minutes before I can carry on. And I think it's that, right? It's the lived reality of choice on choice in the moment. Like, what am I moved to do? Will I actually follow through on that impulse, or will I override it? Like, for me, that's where we make this stuff real, is like in those bits. And then if you didn't, don't go, oh, now I need to suffer. And I mean, it's like, I didn't. Okay, laugh at it, move on, right? And it's, people get so stuck in every bit of it. Yeah. So.
And that's your 5-2-ness. Like, I love how you follow the call, because having the second line in the body, like the 5-2, it is about being called out, and it is the genius that comes through in that. So especially for somebody like you, it's such a perfect example of how you're living your design, and how natural it is to live your design, and that you have a life where you have set it up so that you can hear the calling. Because that's often that we have created a life where it's not that easy to hear, and then, but for you, it's happening, and it's natural, and it's, yeah, it makes me smile.
Yeah, and but there wasn't, like, there are brave bits and, you know, hard bits to that, and part of that is, you know, like I need to live in a country where I don't speak the language. I love that you speak 6 languages. I love that I don't, because it's the only time I'm not hearing everything, is like when I'm in a place where I don't speak the language. And I split my life between, so I have found it very, very difficult to be a 5-2 in one place. I need to 5 and then 2, and there's something about that movement in between, and the solitude and the flights and the travel, that actually allows me to process. And that will not be the same for everyone, but we have to be, I believe, you have to be brave and listen and be like, okay, this is what feels alive, this is the best way for me to live, but it isn't how I was taught, and it isn't what everyone else is doing, but I'm going to do it anyway, right?
100%.
Oh, thank you. We could talk forever, and I have kept you longer than I wanted to. And if people are inspired by this conversation and they want to come and walk the wheel with you, or they want to come and find out more about what you're doing and how they can play, where is the best? I will put all the links in the show notes. So where's the best place for them to come and hang out or to meet you?
I feel for this, just write to me on Facebook, Bella Krystal, because that's where we can have a bit of that personal connection, and hopefully that can spark something. So yeah, Facebook.
Great. I will put the links in also, so that people can read the blogs and, you know, move in and out of all the different places that you've got generously put information. Thank you so much. It's just, yeah, such an honor to connect and to feel your magic, and to be on the same time zone and make it easier. It's so nice. Thank you for tuning in to Becoming Full of Yourself. If you found resonance here, subscribe, share it with someone who's ready to reclaim their fullness, and leave a review to help others find this work. For more resources, rituals, real talk on living a fully fulfilled life, head to ebonyallard.com. Until next time, be bold, be brave, be full of yourself.